So a pretty big game in the Champions League this week at the Emirates. Arsenal and Bayern Munich locked horns for the first tie in the Champions League quarter-finals. Fascinating match, dramatic match, end-to-end football at times as well, and probably quite a surprise result for many people who probably suspected that Arsenal, top of the Premier League table, would probably have a relatively easy time of it against a Bayern Munich side who've more or less imploded in the Bundesliga this season, 16 points behind Bayer Leverkusen, if I'm not mistaken. Ben, watching the game, taking it all in, we've all now had a good night's sleep to think about what we thought of the game. To me, it felt as though almost like the occasion got the better of Arsenal at times. The fans were excited, the players were excited. Mikel Arteta was apoplectic on the sideline for much of the game. What did you take of the performance, of the way the players, the fans, the manager behaved, and do you think it was a case of maybe Arsenal going into a competition that they're slightly inexperienced in?
Yeah, I definitely think it was a case of inexperience. I wouldn't personally put it down to emotion. I think Arsenal started the game really well. Obviously got the goal through Saka, and then for me it was a real pivotal moment when that chance fell to Ben White. It probably fell to the wrong man, to be honest, because it's a great opportunity. Puts it either side of Manuel Neuer. Arsenal were 2-0 up. But then when that adversity comes, that's where the reaction from Arsenal, I think, where you saw the inexperience. So you saw David Raya come for a ball he never should have gone for, and then it's a catalogue of errors from Arsenal. Gabriel doesn't really get the pass right. Kiwior can't sort his feet out. He stretches for a ball when he can just take a step back and take a touch. And then all of a sudden, 2 good passes and Bayern score. And that's when I think you need that experience. When it's going well, I think Arsenal are the better team, it's fine. But then when that goal goes in, I think that's where you notice the experience. And you look at that before, in Arsenal's starting 11 last night, only 2 players before this season had ever played in the Champions League knockout game. They were Kai Havertz and Jorginho, who did it both with Chelsea and also with Napoli and Bayer Leverkusen. In the Arsenal starting 11, between the entire team, there was just 49 knockout Champions League games between them. The majority of them coming from the games against Porto in the round of 16 this season. Manuel Neuer alone has made more Champions League knockout appearances than that entire starting 11 for Arsenal. He's made 61, and that entire Bayern starting 11 has made 223 Champions League knockout played in those games before. And I think that's what we saw in the end. There was a lot of lack of composure from Arsenal. I think you look in the first half, William Saliba, arguably the most composed defender in the world right now, probably alongside Van Dijk. Balls were coming over. It's where he would normally bring it down. He was just heading it into space and putting more pressure on Arsenal. He obviously gave away the penalty as well. It's not over for Arsenal, and they could have melted and lost 3-1, 4-1 from the position they were in. It's 2-2, everything to play for in Munich, but I definitely think experience was a big factor last night.
Yeah, even if you actually just compare the 2 goalkeepers for a moment, David Raya, obviously, so uncomposed for the lead up to the second goal, I believe it was. And then if you look at the lead, I think it was Bayern's second goal as well, where Manuel Neuer from the kick out flicks it up and then actually lobs it over one of the Arsenal forwards.
There was no need for it.
It's just a definition of composure, though, isn't it? And you're absolutely right. And actually, just to actually further contextualise your stats, that's without Thomas Müller on the side, who I think, if I'm not mistaken, is actually the leading appearance holder in the Champions League for players who are still playing in the competition, if that makes sense. So he's not the leading all-time appearance holder, but for players still playing, I think he is. So had he started, then obviously those numbers would have went even further through the roof in contrast to Arsenal. But I want to bring you in here because, even just, that was the match itself, but, as a competition as a whole, we saw Arsenal kind of stumble a wee bit against Porto. They obviously got through in the end, but it does seem as though, Mikel Arteta is very comfortable in the Premier League. He knows it back to front. He obviously came through at Man City as a coach before he moved to Arsenal. He knows Man City very well. We've seen Arsenal set up almost perfectly against Man City in domestic competitions, but it feels like European competition is a different beast for Arsenal. Do you think that's an experience due to Mikel Arteta and the fact that he's just not had a huge amount of game time in the competition as a coach?
I just think experience matters so much in these big games when the pressure on it is highest. If you look at the famous Real Madrid side, who seem to win the Champions League every season, people always said they're not a great team, they don't play great football, but they just get over the line. A big part of that was experience, how to handle the occasion. Football these days, there's so much talk about how important tactics are in football, and they are hugely important, but having that experience to manage a game on the pitch at different game states is incredibly important. I thought Arsenal completely lost their composure for about 10-15 minutes towards the end of the first half, but credit to them. I thought in the second half they regained it, obviously calmed down at half time and came out, I think, with the better team in the second half. My worries for Arsenal going over there would be, again, that inexperience, how to deal with the occasion. The Allianz Arena will be bouncing, and Bayern will have... I'm not sure I do make Bayern favourites because I think Arsenal are probably a better side this season, but I just think the experience they've got on home soil, and I heard Rio Ferdinand talk about it after the game, his experiences going there with Manchester United, and people said Bayern are having a bad moment, Manchester United are favourites, but that's completely out the window in these big games. But it's delicately poised. I think Arsenal are well to come back into it last night, but it is an experience, and the only way you can get experience in these stages is by playing in it, and Arsenal simply haven't been there consistently over the last 5-10 years.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing as well, Ben, the other factor is not only do Bayern have more experienced players in the competition, but they also have a more experienced manager in Thomas Tuchel, who knows his way around the Champions League. He's obviously took PSG to a final, won it with Chelsea, did quite well with Dortmund there as well. With all due respect, within their own context of how well they tend to do in the competition, so they've got that added benefit as well. But to try and bring this back to a hopeful note for some Arsenal fans in the second leg, you could almost kind of flip the kind of expectations going into that Munich game, because in the first leg you had an Arsenal team that were almost goaded on to be very attacking, very dominant, whereas maybe they would have been better suited playing a kind of more defensive first system where, obviously Arsenal have got so much success from their, the defensive records, but they left a lot of space behind because they were trying to score as many goals as they could against Bayern in the home leg before they went to Munich, whereas Bayern were very happy sitting deep and counter-attacking. You could almost say that will kind of flip in this second leg, where Arsenal will go to Munich, probably play deep, try and keep it tight, and then hit Bayern on the break, whereas this Bayern team will obviously maybe feel compelled in front of 70,000 fans at the Allianz Arena to be the attacking team that leaves space behind. So if Arsenal can kind of go back to what they're good at, Ben, you'd argue they probably still have a pretty decent shot in Munich.
Yeah, I think the game's perfectly poised. I think, as you said there, it's going to be a very different approach from Arsenal in Munich. Arsenal's defensive record under Arteta for the last couple of seasons has often been better away from home than at home. We get a lot of clean sheets. I think it's been 5 clean sheets in a row in away games in the Premier League. The team is set up to be more solid and to counter-attack more. So I think we'll definitely see that. I think another boost for Arsenal, Alphonso Davies suspended. Although I didn't think he had his best night last night. And I think for skill, Saka beat him a lot of times. But for pace, Saka had no chance. It's probably going to be Rafael Guerreiro at left-back. Saka's got the ability to beat him for pace and skill. So that could be a big factor. Just back to the experience thing as well. I think if you look at Pep Guardiola when he came to Man City, and Man City had no real European pedigree when he came in the first 3 seasons in the Champions League under Pep, they went out in the round of 16 to Monaco, and then the quarterfinal to Liverpool, and the quarterfinal to Tottenham. And it was a case of building those experiences. So I think it might be something similar with Arsenal going forward. I think even if Arsenal do go out in Munich, I think the experience is going to be invaluable, and I expect Arsenal to be competing in Europe again next season, and can maybe go that one step further because of that experience. But I think it's really 50-50 for me right now. As I said, I think Arsenal are the better team, but they're playing against a team with massive European pedigree and experience, and it's going to be a great game in Munich next week.
Yeah, certainly a work in progress, either way you look at it, for sure, and still plenty to be hopeful for Arsenal fans. Ewan, before I wrap up, do you want to give me what you predict for that second leg?
Like Ben said, it's so delicately poised. I think Arsenal are the better team, and if they can handle the occasion, I think they can do it. I certainly don't think they're out of the tie by any stretch of the imagination, but I would make Bayern slight favourites just with that experience factor. And that Harry Kane's going to do all he can to knock Arsenal out.
Arsenal on pens.
Absolutely. Well, you guys, you guys can let us know in the comments below what you thought of Arsenal's performance, what you thought of Bayern's performance. Do you think experience or inexperience played a huge part in that first leg? And do you think it could dictate what happens in the second leg? So, as always, like and subscribe if you enjoy what we do. And we'll speak to you again soon.